Hello and welcome to Muppetsational, the UK's biggest Muppet Show podcast, hosted by three huge Muppet fans. Join us each week as we dive into an episode of Jim Henson's classic variety show, now finally available on Disney+. This week, it's Season 2, Episode 10, starring the cigar-chomping comic George Burns. It's time to get things started on the chronological, explorational, conversational Muppetsational!
Woo-hoo!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Muppetsational. I'm Lewis Chandler.
I'm Jade Turner.
And I'm Emma Chandler.
And this week, as I'm sure you've already seen by our episode title, we are joined by a special guest. Our guest this week is Scott Hanson, who is the co-founder of Muppet Wiki in 2005. He has previously worked for Wikia. He also founded the Superman Wiki and is a bureaucrat for the Wonder Woman Wiki. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I've got to say, the Muppet Wiki has been a great deal of help for us over the first season and a half of recording Muppetsational. And anytime we have missed anything, our listeners have been very good at directing us to Muppet Wiki to show us where we have gone wrong. So thank you so much for not only providing us with corrections, but with our listeners too.
Well, I'm glad it's been helpful, and I'm sorry for the headaches.
No headaches at all. It's so amazing to be able to have that resource to go to every single week. I watch the episode and then the first thing I do is go to Muppet Wiki and find out what I can from Muppet Wiki and then go on the rabbit holes and the deep dives from there. But yeah, thank you genuinely. We're so grateful for
thank you.
all of the work that everyone does putting into it. It's an astounding resource, truly.
Well, thank you for using it. Yeah, we have an incredible group of editors. As you said, we started in 2005, so we've been going at this for well over 16 years. And editors have come and gone, but we've had a strong core group of editors and administrators who kind of look over the whole thing, make sure that everything's in good shape, make sure that everything is accurate, make sure everything is sourced properly, so that if somebody says like, hey, are you sure that that's correct, we can point to a published source or a documentary or something to point out the fact that this is indeed how things went down. And really it's just all about documenting everything, pretty much everything that Jim Henson ever did in his career.
That's fantastic. Scott, the question that we ask all of our guests that we have on Muppetsational, or at least the very first question we ask them, is how did you first get into the Muppets?
Well, I think it probably starts the same as most folks. You were introduced to them at a young age. For me, as it directly relates to this podcast, I didn't watch the Muppet Show religiously or really all that quite frequently. I certainly have episodes that I remember watching and catching. I grew up in the 80s, so I was at the very tail end of when the show was airing in its first run and then in its reruns. But for me, growing up, the three Jim Henson movies were kind of like the seminal Muppet works for me, and everything else was kind of secondary to that. And then every Christmas, it was a tradition for us to play the John Denver and the Muppets A Christmas Together album. That to me is, keep every episode of the Muppet Show, keep every movie, and I'll just hang on to that record because it's just perfect to me. And if you've ever held the physical record in your hand and you've opened up and looked at that beautiful gatefold designed by Michael Frith beautifully, it's just it's a beautiful little work of art. So yeah, that's kind of where I came to it. And then, as I got older, interests kind of went elsewhere. When my daughter was born, I immediately started looking for things that I could bring back into my life that were, important to me as a kid or that shaped me as a kid. And Sesame Street and the Muppets were certainly one of the first places that I went to. And it was around that time that Danny Horn, who started Muppetscene in the 90s, he started Tough Pigs around that time in the early 2000s. And actually, I think it was either, when did he start? He either started that in 99 or 2000. I can't remember. But I quickly, I got to know him. I worked as a researcher for him, and we worked on a number of articles together. I did a lot of technical stuff for him. And then one day we were talking on the phone, actually. Wikipedia was kind of gaining speed, and he had the idea. Danny said, why don't we do a Wikipedia, but for the Muppets? And I won't get too deep into that whole thing, but basically that's where we started. We said, yeah, okay, let's set it on up, and here we are 16 years later.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. It's such a I don't know. I mean, I guess we started a podcast, but I can't even imagine the gargantuan task of taking on something like Jim Henson's body of work and everything else that's come out of that, because it's just so incredibly vast. Obviously, I guess it starts smaller and then you build on it for 16 years plus.
Yeah. Pretty famously, our first article was for Fozzie Bear, and the only contents of that article, you clicked on the Fozzie Bear article, and it said Fozzie Bear is a bear, and that was it. It just built from there, And of course, at the time, this was in 2005, so people had been building episode guides for their favorite TV shows for well over a decade or so. And you could find episode guides for all the Star Trek series, all the X-Files series, pretty much anything that had like a big fan following. You could get something like that too. But, and there were a few, there were some for the Muppets, but we really kind of wanted to do a deep dive. There was virtually nothing for Sesame Street, mostly because, the vast majority of those 4,000 plus episodes are just, I don't want to use the word lost, but they're kind of tucked away, and they're really inaccessible. At the time, the Muppet Show was also fairly inaccessible. It had most recently run in reruns on Nickelodeon, and then the Odyssey Channel, or vice versa. It had also run on the Disney Channel in the UK, I believe. I'm probably getting some of that wrong, but anyway, it was kind of around, and people had, they had taped episodes from TV, so you could, there were tape trading circles where people would make dubs and mail them to each other before we had Kazaa and file sharing online. But we kind of built up from there, and now that it's available on Disney Plus, everybody, outside of 2 episodes and a handful of episodes that don't have a complete cut there, it's all up on Disney Plus, and everybody can go check it out anytime, which I think is amazing. I think it's great. It's about time that new generations could discover it and inspire folks like you to start up a podcast to go through the whole thing. I think that's exciting.
It is. I mean, it's been so. I mean, we're all obviously just lifelong Muppet fans, but our interaction has entirely been via the films or the TV specials, or a little bit of Muppet Babies as well. So actually, to sort of get to the core text, or the sort of, these sacred scrolls, has been a really sort of fun and interesting experience to see the show sort of develop and those characters find their footing. This might be a difficult question, and obviously you've got 16 years worth of sort of research and building and everything to go on it. Was there one particular sort of surprising or unusual fact that you sort of either found or sort of came to light via Muppet Wiki that sort of stood out to you in some way, or something that surprised you?
Oh gosh, so many.
I know. I realize that's such a vast question.
It's incredible. It constantly happens. I keep a we have communication tools on the wiki, but we also the admins, we keep a kind of off wiki chat going, and whenever we find something that's incredible, or something that we never knew existed, there are things that, there's a lot of Sam and Friends stuff that people know is lost, and we kind of have descriptions of it, and we're, there's an inkling that there's something like that out there that we might one day see. and I'm on the spot and I can't think of anything specific, but there, every once in a while we come across something where we didn't even know something existed, and it just kind of pops up out of nowhere. It might be like a celebrity who worked with the Muppets that we never thought had worked with the Muppets. It might be a project that they did. There's, and again, unlike other franchises, I'm a big Star Trek fan, and all of Star Trek is out there to, anybody can go and look at. And even before streaming, you could get the DVDs, even going back to the 60s. It was pretty easy to get your hands on that stuff and the books and whatnot. But with Jim Henson's career, and because it was not just, one show or one series of shows, he did so many different things, so many different franchises. There's an enormous amount of material that has yet to be discovered, and we're still finding new things. And I'm always amazed at the stuff that we haven't found yet, and when we do find something new, that we can finally say, oh wow, here it is. Let's put it out to the world, and when we do, there's an article for it, and we go as deep as we can.
That's fantastic. It must be such a sort of rewarding thing to do. We should probably jump into the episode that we're wanting to look at today.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Is there? So you chose George Burns from the second season. Is there a particular reason you decided upon this episode to come on and join us to chat about?
Well, it was one of the episodes that was available when Jade reached out.
People did snap them up fast, actually.
Yeah. No, and I think also I had probably just rewatched some George Burns stuff. George Burns is, what an incredible career this guy had. He lived to be 100 years old. He's one of only two Muppet Show guests who were born before 1900. The other one was he and Senior Wences were born in the same year, 1896. But he's interesting because his movie career, like his feature film career, didn't really start until the mid 1970s. He's got this long career of vaudeville and radio and television shows and kind of variety show appearances. He did, if you look at his filmography, there are some films listed in the 1930s, but they were kind of like these theatrical shorts. His feature film career didn't really start until the mid 70s. If you're interested, do you get into trivia now, or how do you do trivia?
Emma normally tees us up with a little bit about the guest. But so if I it's great. So if I just kick us off with the production information for the show, and then we can just carry on with this conversation, I think.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, cool. So this episode was originally broadcast on the 30th of September 1977. It was written by Jerry Jewell, Joseph A. Bailey, Jim Henson and Don Hinckley, and directed by Peter Harris. And Emma, following on from Scott's already very extensive biography on George Burns, what else did you find out?
Yeah, so as Scott was just saying, George Burns was born in 1896, which just completely blew my mind when I found that out. And yes, he lived to 100, which is absolutely crazy. He was a comedian, actor, singer, writer. He was on vaudeville, radio, TV and film. He started his career as a child in vaudeville. And then in 1923, he met Gracie Allen, who he then went on to marry, but they started as a comedy duo act.
Oh, cool.
And they were very successful on radio. They were on NBC radio from 1932 to 1950. Like Scott was saying, he's also in a few little films during the 30s. And then they moved on to TV, and they were on CBS. And then, in the 70s, he kind of had a bit of a career renaissance, and he appeared in a few different films, and he actually won Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his performance in The Sunshine Boys. And he was described as the legendary cigar chomping performer. And in 1988, he won the Lifetime Achievement Award from the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts.
Nice.
And yeah, he was pretty active right up to his death, essentially, and he was doing a lot of shows and things like that. And then he died aged 100 in 1996.
Wow.
Incredible.
I can't believe he would have been 16 when the Titanic sank. Like that.
I know, it's
That
unbelievable.
is the kind of thing that just... If he'd lived 1 year longer, he could have seen the movie on which that event that happened while he was a teenager was based.
Well, maybe that's why he got out of there. He was like, I can't be doing with this. I lived
I
through
won't
it
hear
once.
one bad word against... Oh, okay, fine. I was like, I will not hear one bad word.
No, I mean, from his point of view, he was like, I lived through the actual thing. I do not need to see.
But he wasn't on the boat, Jade. Like, George Burns wasn't there going, oh, you think that iceberg's bad? You should have seen the iceberg I had in my whiskey. Like,
I'm sure he did a bit about Titanic, Lewis.
It completely blew my mind to think of like all the historical moments that he lived through in time.
He's like Forrest Gump. That's completely nuts. Like, because he already looked, I mean, fairly old on The Muppet Show. And the fact that he then is going to hang around for another 20 years or so after that fact is... And he was smoking a cigar like the entire time.
And clearly lived on cigars.
Yeah, that was a secret.
It just shows like nothing matters.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink this vodka martini like with impunity now.
Scott, was the cigar thing something that he just always constantly had? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you watch any of his TV shows or his appearances, he always had a cigar in his hand. And you know, they make some jokes about it here in the Muppet Show. We'll get to them as we go through. But so I grew up. He was in 3 movies where he plays God. He's in the Oh God movies. Oh God, Book 2, and Oh God, You Devil is the 3rd one, which is a lot of fun because he plays God opposite himself as the devil.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
But yes, literally, oh God.
Oh God, oh for goodness sake.
Nicely done, Lewis. Nicely done. But no, in the first one where he stars with Muppet Show guest star John Denver, they actually wrote a bit in because, you know, anybody who was working on that movie, they know that George Burns is known for appearing with a cigar, and they said, okay, well, can we have God smoking a cigar in this movie? Apparently they decided not and wrote a joke about it. And what is the actual line is he's I forget how the exchange starts, but his line is, tobacco was one of my big mistakes, he says, as God. So yeah, it was a little, you know, tongue-in-cheek joke there for the audience. Anybody who was going to see that movie, I'm sure, knew him from his TV show appearances, and you just didn't see George Burns without a cigar in his hand.
He seems like quite a cool guy. I mean, when the scene opens, and obviously we get our sort of like cold open with Scooter going to the dressing room. My first note is George Burns seems like the kind of guy who may have called a hit on somebody. Like he just had I don't know, he just had the look or energy of somebody who may have maybe ordered someone to death. But I don't know.
He just felt so relaxed to me. Like he was clearly having a really great time, but also the way that he delivered, like even with this like silly little joke about Gonzo fiddles while George Burns, like he even played around with that in a way that just felt like effortlessly cool. Just clearly such a master entertainer.
He was in his 70s.
Yeah, that's a great joke. And of course, so like a lot of things in this episode, it goes right back to his vaudeville act. This episode is so very George Burns, which, you know, I didn't know at the time because I barely knew George Burns. I knew him from the Oh God movies, and that was about it when I was younger. But as you go through this episode again, just the flavor of his humor is written all throughout. And I don't know if that's because the writers reached out to him and asked for his input on the script, or if the writers were just familiar with his act and said, like, let's write a George Burns episode. It's obviously one of those two, because this, you know, Gonzo fiddles while George Burns, always loved that joke. And of course, you know, he comes around and adds, you know, a new little twist to it, saying like, you know, what does he say?
I think he says, "I love a joke that's older than me," or
Older
something
than
along
I,
those lines. Yeah.
Which of course is that is a literal reference to they did that bit, him and Jack Benny, for years. Jack Benny was a violinist. They worked together all the way back to the vaudeville days. And Jack fiddles while George Burns was a a common joke that they told. So the fact that they bring it back here, and not only do they put a new spin on it, but they put a new kind of comedy button on the end of it, I think is perfect and just right for the Muppet Show.
You're so right about the writing. It's so much more patter. And not so much in the sort of season 1 writing of the Muppet Show, where it was kind of like quite leaden puns that kind of sort of like land with a thud and the audience groans and you move on. This is so light on its feet and just kind of has a sort of frivolity, but also like an eloquence and sharpness to it that it really just makes the whole episode, it gives it kind of a verve and a nice, vaudeville old school energy. And obviously to have George doing it, he's such a master that it kind of feels like it just elevates like all of the other performers around him to sort of match his level.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much of the Muppet Show is a reference to vaudeville anyway, or maybe not a reference, but I mean, there are elements of it there. A lot of the humor comes from there. They definitely took a lot of songs from that were popular in vaudeville. So the fact that they have, I think when Edgar Bergen was on the show, they talk about how they have like, entertainment royalty there, or maybe maybe it was also Milton Berle. They probably said it a few times, but from the perspective of the type of vaudevillian entertainment that they were doing with, song and dance and the humor, George Burns is definitely royalty. This is a great episode to get kind of like a good perspective on where they were coming from when they were putting the show together.
Much better this one than the we actually recently in the order we've been recording just encountered the Edgar Bergen episode, and I don't think any of us could quite get over the fact of how much Edgar Bergen's mouth moves while he's meant to be being a ventriloquist.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, don't forget I'm sure you talked about this too, but he started on radio too, and the fact that he's doing a ventriloquist act on, well, I guess he didn't start on radio. I guess again it was also vaudeville, but the fact that he became so popular in radio is just so ironic because nobody could see them, so of course he could do whatever he wanted to.
Yeah, we did say that.
Yeah. But also in a theatre, if you're in the back of the stalls, you wouldn't have been able to see his
even the
mouth
front
move
row. You'd
anyway,
still be like
would
maybe
you,
6 to 10 feet away from him, whereas a camera is incredibly unforgiving, and that's just a man talking. That is just while holding a dummy.
Well, that's why to tangent very slightly,
we welcome tangents. It's fine, don't worry.
So Jim Henson talks about how people would get nervous if they saw him in the same shot as Kermit or something, like if he was appearing on the Tonight Show or whatever. But he never claimed to be a ventriloquist or somebody who was throwing his voice. Yeah. As a matter of fact, some of the earlier appearances that he would do on talk shows in the 60s and 70s, he's in the same shot as Kermit, and as things went on into the 80s, you see him less and less, and then of course after he passes away and Steve Whitmire takes over, you almost never ever see them together. But there are certain talk shows that he appears on where you can see that and I don't know if it was the choice of the camera operator or the director or whatever, zooming right in on Kermit and trying to crop Jim out of the shot. To me, it feels like such a shame, like we're being robbed of seeing, I don't know, the full performance, or like just seeing the magic happen, because Jim was okay with it. So, the producers of these other TV shows should have been fine with it too. But definitely a different, actually, and we're not talking about the Edgar Bergen episode anyway. This is the George Burns episode. What are we doing?
The other thing I really felt like with this episode was that it felt so British. There were so many references and songs, and just, I don't know, the whole way through there just seemed to be little nods to British culture and history. And I have no idea whether that was because they wanted to do something that was more music hall vaudeville because of having George Burns on, or whether that was just a coincidence because of having the introduction of Fleet Scribbler and things, but it felt like one of the most British episodes of the show we've seen so far.
Short of Bruce Forsyth, I think, maybe.
Yes, short of Brucey, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you guys have talked about the UK spots before and how those were kind of custom made for the British audience. But yeah, I think the majority of certainly the songs that George is involved in this, he had done before. He had recorded them. Mm-hmm. He had done them in his act before. I don't know what the origins of a lot of them are. I mean, certainly Watcher knocked him in
the old Kent Road,
whatever that song is called. That's super music hall stuff right there.
Well, one song that certainly isn't incredibly British is the first number we get. Emma, why don't you lead us into the opening number that we get from this episode?
Yeah, so our opening number of this episode is Miss Piggy in a Carmen Miranda-esque costume in some sort of like hacienda with some maraca playing pigs, and I'm probably going to completely murder what this song is called. So
Sorry, Emma, I realised that Emma's elocution is not always the strongest. So
come on, Emma, you can do it. You can do it.
Throw Emma a curveball sometimes. Go on, Emma.
We believe in you, Emma. We believe in you.
We believe. Oh God, I'm getting really stressed now. I think it's called Quanta la Gesta?
Quanta la Gusta.
There we go.
You were very close.
At least I actually said it in one sentence, which is good. Yeah.
We gotta get going, where we go, and what are we going to do? We're on our way to somewhere, the three of us and you. What we see there, who will be there? What will be the big surprise? There may be senoritas with dark and flashing eyes. We're on our way. We're on our way. Pack up your pack. Pack up your pack. And if we stay, we won't come back. We won't come back. How can we go? We haven't got the dime, but we're going, and we're gonna have a happy time.
Now. A shock, I'm sure, to everyone. I absolutely loved this. This was camp gold. It felt like an MGM sort of set piece that you'd find in one of their sort of like folly ensemble films. And Piggy was just so much fun and so great. It was joyful. After the day I've had, it's been absolutely joyful to watch this.
Piggy was amazing, but it wasn't just Piggy. All of the other pigs were amazing too. You had the ones up on the balcony clapping along, and the one playing the trumpet that was throwing herself over the balcony, which I think we'll probably talk about in a minute. But the whole ensemble was absolutely amazing, and I really loved how colourful and vivacious it was, I guess. And I've also felt like they had thought about how they wanted to stage it, with Piggy moving back and forward to the camera, because it was quite a relatively simple setup, but then actually because of that movement, and then because of having that shot that looked up to the balcony as well, it really brought it to life, and it felt a lot more energetic and sort of lived in than quite often the opening number does. Yeah, Scott, what did you make of it?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the story Dave Goelz tells about this number, right? He's told it on several different occasions. He wrote about it in, I think I probably first read about it in Jim Henson The Works. I think he talks about it on one of the special features on the Muppet Treasure Island disc 2, when he's talking about how, as performers, it was expected of each other that they would try to upstage each other. So, Jade, you were talking about the pigs up on the balcony there, the one who sort of bends over backwards playing the horn or the trumpet, whatever it is. And that was Dave specifically trying to upstage Frank in that number. And I think it was Steve Whitmire who was next to him, the other pig in the balcony there, who was, I think he's trying to show off for him, and they both knew that Frank was, kind of gonna get a little peeved that Piggy was being upstaged, because if there's any character you don't want upstage, it's Piggy. But yeah, it works really well. It's a good example of the way that they would play with each other behind the scenes.
But what's so great about this as well, even just in a narrative sense, that Piggy does get this very gorgeous opening number, and she's fabulous in it, and she's, leading this sort of band of other pigs who, also just do not have the same level of features as her either, so that even at their best attempt to pull focus, she's the only one with like whites of her eyes as well, so you're naturally more just drawn to her. But then you get to the finale where they lift her and she crosses her gorgeous little fishnet leg, and then they just drop her on the floor, and it's just such a perfect little button that's sort of that kind of deflation of Piggy, much to her chagrin, is just so the perfect kind of little button. Like, she doesn't even get to sort of have the full moment of a gloriously sort of concluded number. She still has to get dropped by her slightly incompetent co-stars.
Yeah, the Muppets have done a lot of Carmen Miranda-esque stuff. This is probably the most Carmen Miranda-esque thing they did, because it's literally a Carmen Miranda number that she did in 1948 in the movie A Date with Judy. But I knew it from before I had. This was not one of the episodes that I had seen growing up. I knew this song first from, it was in an episode of Quantum Leap, where the main character, if you're familiar with that show, he leaps around in different people's bodies throughout time.
Scott Bakula?
Scott Bakula, yeah, great show. He leaps into a woman who's competing in a beauty contest or a talent contest. So you've got Scott Bakula in this Carmen Miranda getup, prancing around the stage like an idiot, trying to perform Quanta Lagusta. I think Miss Piggy did it better. She wins.
I'm sure she'd be grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre that this Carmen Miranda number was in this, because I was actually randomly reminded of Carmen Miranda the other day, because there was a guy on one of my uni courses for my BA who was weirdly obsessed with Carmen Miranda.
Jade, we went on the same university course together. I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I think he was straight, Lewis, which kind of made it. Yeah, I know. But he'd written about Carmen Miranda in so many of his courses that the tutors were having to tell him he had to stop writing about Carmen Miranda, or it might actually like impact him being able to get his degree, because he was basically like going over the same stuff constantly. Yeah, he was absolutely obsessed with her. It was so funny. So yeah, so this I would like randomly thought about that the other day, and then this popped up and I was like, oh look, I wonder if he ever wrote about Miss Piggy as Carmen Miranda. He probably did.
I hope so.
God, that's such a...
So strange.
Yeah, that's very...
I also like Statler and Waldorf's little pig Latin joke on the end of this too.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that was good.
It's solid.
So I've already made reference to him briefly in this episode, but this is the first episode where we get a proper introduction to Fleet Scribbler, who is being performed by Jerry Nelson. And Fleet Scribbler is I don't even want to say journalist. I guess he's a tabloid reporter in the Great British. That's in quote marks.
In the worst British tradition.
In the worst British tradition, and he immediately makes it clear that he is not there for anything other than a hack story where he's taking everything out of context for poor Kermit, and. I don't know. I thought it was quite fun to see Kermit and the other Muppets interact with such a different type of character than we've really seen on the show so far. Although I guess he is himself quite one note. There's not an awful lot you can do with him as a character. But I liked how as we went through the different backstage bits of the show that we got to see the different characters interact with him. Yeah, what did you all make of it?
I think Fleet is, you said he's fairly one note. I think that's probably accurate, but I feel like you could probably say that about a lot of different Muppet characters, that they start off kind of one note and then develop. I think in this case, I think they fairly wisely started to write him out. They, it might have been in the book of Muppets and Men where Jerry Jewell is talking about how they wrote him in response to the way that like they'd have the media come on set and do interviews and whatever, and they were just kind of inspired to create this character in response to that. So when they unveiled him, the media loved him, but the writers just quickly, like, they were like, oh God, what did we do? We hate this character. It's awful. We need to write him out. He just so yeah, I don't know how much more you could have done with him. They use him prominently in like 2 or 3 episodes, and then little kind of background appearances after that, and that's probably the right way they probably should have gone with him.
I did not realize he was going to be coming back.
Spoilers.
No, it's more just like I just don't do the Jade and Emma do the research. I bring vibes. That's what I bring to it. I just bring vibes and tangents. So the fact that he's coming back is a full surprise to me.
Well,
so,
you're welcome,
cool.
Lewis. I just completely destroyed the Muppet Show for you. I ruined it. Fleet Scribbler comes back with a vengeance.
Oh my God. Yeah, his use over this episode is, I know what you mean. That I was sort of worried that maybe we were just going to get repeats of the first scene with Kermit again and again with like different characters. But actually his approaching Piggy and trying to sort of maybe charm her into an interview, and then obviously trying to...
And a page 3 spread, Lewis. A page 3
Okay, so when
spread.
they said that, I wrote it down. I was like... Because when he mentioned it, I was like, wait, do they actually mean like of ye olde page 3 that we used to have, obviously? Mm-hmm. But then I was like, so yes, why isn't Piggy like walloping him around the head? Because she just sort of...
I know!
Because she then agrees. I was like, God, the 70s. It's a different time. Yeah, it's very odd to think that within our lifetime, Scott, that we just grew up with like a national press that we could literally walk into a shop and pick up a newspaper, and on the 3rd page there would just be like a woman with her breasts out. It's like we're just such a restrained country,
and it didn't finish that long ago.
No, surprisingly
recently was it. And also I think there is still now a woman, but I think she's usually in a bikini, but it's still there's still something for the lads on page 3. It's just bizarre.
There's someone to blame for that. I don't know who it is, but Benny Hill maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think that would have been the perfect opportunity for a good Piggy hiya, though, wouldn't you? Really, like someone's offering her that, and she's apparently not above that at this point in time.
Maybe it was still glamorous. I don't know. Like it was 78. I mean, to be fair, like we grew up in the age of like Katie Price / Jordan becoming like a household name from having started on page 3.
So are you suggesting that his offer to run a feature of her on page 3 is because it was expected to be explicit? Is that what you're...
It would have been, yeah. It's saying someone's on page 3 means they're going to have their top off. That's what that means.
And particularly he says a photo series.
So I think
yeah. Okay,
all right. So that's okay. So that's news to me, but I also don't think that really contradicts. Now from here we are in 2022 looking back at the 70s. Yeah, you wouldn't want to associate Piggy with wanting to be a part of that. But if you read anything that Frank Oz has ever said about the development of Miss Piggy, I think that is perfectly in line with who Miss Piggy is. I have come up with some really smutty stuff that Frank Oz has like, stuff about how like she slept with all the Muppets except for Kermit. I can't cite these things off the top of my head right now. That's, I always say that the reason why I can't remember a lot of Muppet trivia is because I made the wiki to put it on there so I can forget about it. But I could point you to these articles where he has said some stuff. So you now, shedding new light on that for me, from my perspective, that totally jives with what they were thinking about Piggy at the time. Yeah. 100%.
Well, you can now cite Muppetsational as confirming that Miss Piggy would absolutely take her top off in the George Burns.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I was going to ask as well whether that would have been something that translated to an American audience, that they would have understood that that's what that meant.
Yeah,
and
the inferring
from your response, it
3.
sounds
probably
like,
not.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't reading newspapers in 1976 or
course.
whatever, but I could, I don't know how well that would have translated. I'm going to guess probably not very well.
I think to sort of sum it up, it's a phrase over here that you would refer to someone as a page 3 model, and that means that someone who does take their top off for.
Got it. Miss Piggy, page 3 model.
Oh my god!
Got it.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no! I suddenly feel
What
like
have we done?
we've opened up a.
As said by Muppetsational.
I feel like we've opened up a page on like deviant art that I don't want to see. Do you know what I mean? Or like a Tumblr that I don't want to like fall on.
Never.
Never.
You have inspired the deviant artist.
Oh God. Put that on my tombstone.
So we have our first sort of song with George, and it's with my favourite Rolf.
Or as George calls him at one point, Ralph.
Yeah.
Which I really enjoy.
And Rolf sat at the piano and they have a nice bit of patter back and forth before he starts doing his Rex Harrison sing, speak song.
Emma, how did this rate for you?
But no, I thought it was
Oh,
really...
yeah, sorry, I was teeing you up, Emma. Sorry, I don't know why I was bothering.
Carry on, Emma,
You were still talking. I don't know why I was
Carry on.
trying to do that.
No, I was just going to say, I really like their interaction, especially when George was just talking at the beginning about the dog act and, saying, like, he bit me twice. And I loved how, like, Rolf was like, I'm sorry about that. It's like, oh. So then he goes into Train Back Home, which is actually quite a sweet little song.
I really liked it, actually. I enjoyed all of these little Ralph and George numbers.
Rolf.
Don't, because you'll get it in your head and then you'll just be messed up.
Okay, Ralph, in my key, Train Back Home. I guess I'll take the train back home. Hold it, Ralph. You're liable to hurt yourself. Play like you're not getting paid. Nice and easy.
Right, nice and easy it is.
Right from the top.
Right.
I guess I'll take the train back home. There's no more sights here left for me to see. I've wined and dined and gazed on bill of fares till mother's homemade pies look good to me. San Francisco is a grand old place. When I get back, I'll never roam. Tell those cable cars to wait and open up that golden gate. I'm gonna take the train back home to San Francisco.
I loved the bit where he said that the theatre manager cancelled him but hired the dog. Like, it just, that like silly vaudevillian style of humour, but just so perfect. And he absolutely threw it away and then went straight into the song. And there was just there was just a fluidity to it all. He felt so, like, I've done this a million times, but I'm also having the time of my life doing it again. I'm more than happy to do it.
But it's also just the cleverness of the writing where they talk about the dog does his act on stage, and it's left up to the audience member to either get that or not. That as far as I assumed, it's the dog taking a shit on the stage. It's what I thought. Is that right?
That's the way I took it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said about him biting him as well.
Yeah, but
so
I think that was then afterwards. But it's just that kind of level, that kind of style of writing. I don't know. It leaves it all up to the audience to just sort of put it together, and it's kind of that perfect kind of writing that can get past a censor. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the sort of defense that that writers use when they go, well, it doesn't say that on the page. It's only what you are inferring as the viewer at home, and it's just I love it. I
think the way it's delivered, it's meant to suggest something naughtier than it is, because he says, and then the dog did his act, and he waits a beat, and the audience is thinking, oh no, the dog pooped on stage, but then he follows it up with, he bit me. You say, oh, George Burns, you silly, you made me think about poop. But you weren't thinking about that at all, were you? Which I think, and that's where the humor is. You kind of tease something naughty with the audience, and then you you pull it back and say, nah, well, all right, not really. And it's kind of clever and cute. I like it.
I've said it a million times on this podcast already. Anytime a person kind of stands by a piano and then half monologues and then half sing talks is so absolutely my vibe. All it was missing while I was watching it was like maybe like being 3 martinis in and like holding a, I don't know, like a I can't remember what the brand of cigarettes. Oh, Lucky Strike, a Lucky Strike cigarette, and just sort of sitting there thinking about driving home after I finish my 3rd martini. It's just a good vibe. It's a very good vibe.
Yeah, that was part of his kind of usual shtick. There's a lot of comedy written around how George Burns and his co-stars, where he keeps promising he's going to sing something, and his co-stars would say, "Oh no, we don't want you to sing," because they know that he doesn't really sing. It's kind of like this kind of sing kind of thing. He sings a little bit more on his albums. Like, for example, this Train Back Home, this is a song he had done before. He recorded it on a 1975 album called "In Evening with George Burns." But yeah, this is almost verbatim what he had done before. He also had. Is this the bit where they do the Jascha Heifetz joke? Playing
yes, it is. Yeah.
So I came across a bit where I think it was with Jack Burns, where they go back and forth and they make a Jascha Heifetz joke, but it's not this one. This is kind of like a variation on it, which again, I really appreciate that they went back and kind of dusted off this old joke, but made it new for the Muppet Show. It just feels right for what they were doing here.
I think it sounds to me like the writers were obviously massive George Burns fans, and they were just thinking about like his greatest hits and then just giving them a little Muppety twist. And yeah, it works so well. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Emma, how did this stack up for you in terms of Rolf performances? Is this higher or lower in your sort of your list?
I think it was quite high. I just, like I said earlier, I really liked him and George and how they interacted with each other, and it was just really cute. I really liked it. So I would say it's probably on the higher end of the Rolf performances scale.
I love that Rolf went crazy and then George had to tell him to play it like you're not getting paid. That's a great line.
That was great. That was really good.
Good advice.
Yeah, the fact that he ends it with, no, wasn't that a nice song?
Yeah.
It's a nice little button on the end.
It's good.
Now, I know we've already mentioned this, the little backstage scene that follows this, but I do just want to shout out Piggy's line into the dressing room. How should I know what Quanta Augusta means? It's just, like Piggy's characterization is just so absolutely bang on now. This kind of like superior minded, but the slightly rough and ready aspect to her as well. Like there's the glamour, but then it's also the kind of like grit underneath. It's not just the sort of like simpering kind of after Kermit or like the occasional hi-hat. It's still got that like it's just such a perfect way to land on that little scene.
It really made me laugh.
Yeah, I was great. I was like, I need to get that down.
Although I did get quite excited that we were going to get a Pigs in Space because she was in her Pigs in Space outfit, and then I was glad to see Veterinarian's Hospital, but we didn't get a Pigs in Space. So I don't know why she was wearing that.
But I like that kind of continuing narrative of like, just because we don't see it. I actually kind of like the idea that there's, maybe a full 90-minute run of stuff that the Muppet Theatre is doing of that evening. And just this evening, we're not privy to seeing Pigs in Space, but, all the hustle and bustle of stuff that's happening backstage is still kind of going on. I kind of like that in a world.
Yeah, or maybe even it was going on during another backstage bit and we were backstage and we weren't on stage.
Yeah. We were in a dressing room while George Burns like exhaled his cigar smoke over those poor puppets. They must have been put like a steam clean by the end of this episode. They must have all stank.
I was thinking that too. I was like, especially poor Rolf, because he was obviously in a lot of scenes with him. I was like, that Rolf puppet is going to need a deep clean.
He's gonna deep clean and then like hung out outside to like really air out. Oh, Emma, I'm sorry. You just walk past and you just see Rolf
flapping in the breeze,
blowing in the breeze. and would hop the fence and rescue him.
Well, now I want to see the deleted Pigs in Space sketch.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You might find it one day, Scott.
Yeah. The Pigs in Space sketch that doesn't exist.
It's the actually maybe it goes into a page 3.
No, don't.
Page
Oh my
3
God.
Pigs in Space. Star Whores.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, God.
I couldn't. It was right there. Oh God.
Pardon me, boy. Is this the Chattanooga Choo Choo? Choo Choo, track 29. Hey, you can give me a shine. Do-ba-ba-ba. Can you afford to board the Chattanooga Choo Choo? Woo, woo. I've got my fare and just a trifle to spare. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When you hear the whistle blowing 8 to the bar, then you know the Tennessee is not very far. Shovel the coal in, gotta keep it rolling. Woo woo, Chattanooga, there you are.
I was so excited when Chattanooga Choo Choo started up. I cannot tell you how much I love this song. I think, now, Lewis,
What?
no, you're pulling a face, so I'm guessing, I remember tap dancing to this, so I'm guessing that wasn't a stagecoach thing.
No, I never did. Well, we never did tap.
You didn't do tap,
No.
did you? No, okay, no.
Oh, I'd
So
love
it
to
must
see
be-
you tap dance to that.
She's doing a tap dance to Chattanooga Choo Choo. That's so Shirley Temple.
I cannot remember the dance.
Or Bonnie Langford.
When did you do tap?
Oh, I tapped for quite a long time, went from like quite small to about 12 or 13.
That's a lot of tap.
Oh, I don't remember that though. I don't remember knowing that about you.
I did ballet, modern, and tap.
Well, we all did
throughout
modern
my
and jazz,
entire
Jade.
childhood.
So,
Kapow. Yeah,
Apart
no,
from
I
me.
I remember tap dancing to this and like loving it. So when it came on, I just was flooded with lots of childhood dance memories, and they're all good. They're
Oh,
fine.
okay, well,
they're happy. Before anyone's like, "Did you have to unpack them?" Nope, they're fine.
So weirdly, I also have a memory associated with the song, although not featuring me, but it is featuring Emma and I's dad. So I used to work at a 1940s themed cocktail bar that was themed to like an underground station, and on Saturdays they would do a version of an afternoon tea, but it would be booze instead of tea. And my friend Anna is part of a singing trio like the Anderson sisters called the Hotsy Totsies, and her character is Lois Legs Laurel, and she would present the sort of squiffy picnic. She would do numbers, and she'd go around and do a bit of interaction and banter with the crowd. And our parents went with a couple of friends of theirs once to do the what they called the squiffy picnic at Cahoots. Book now. And
You don't work there anymore, Lewis.
If you mention that you heard it from Muppetsational featuring Lewis Chandler, I might get some money off of it. Maybe just see what happens. And then, so I told Anna that my parents were coming in, and my dad was my family was going to be sitting in this particular table. And Anna literally would not leave them alone for the entire thing. And there is one particular moment where she sings the Chattanooga Choo Choo, and she comes through and she creates a conga line of a train, and she made my dad the front of the Chattanooga Choo Choo, and there is a picture of my dad like proudly leading this little Chattanooga Choo Choo, and he mentions it at any moment he can. He's like, I was a fundamental part of the Chattanooga Choo Choo. So yeah, whenever I hear this song now, I just remember standing at the bar watching my nearly 60-year-old father just sort of like proudly like walk while Lois holds onto his hips and like sings the Chattanooga Choo Choo. So yeah, good on Dad.
Now, did either of these performances take place in front of a projection screen with a toy train on it?
Unfortunately not.
Unfortunately not.
Well,
that's all that was missing.
I have good news for you. They did it on the Muppet Show.
They beat us to it.
Yeah. I did wonder when this number started, and it was just the four performers in front of this kind of blue or green screen. I did wonder whether the opening number with Piggy had spent the entire budget, because every other number just takes place in front of either a blue screen or a single flat screen. I was like, oh, maybe that sort of Latin set took up all the budget for this week.
I found it quite funny for the fact that they decided to do that, especially when you think of like all of the past Wayne and Wanda sketches where you had kind of actual props falling on them, or I think it would have been really effective if somehow they managed to do some sort of like train prop rather than it being the...
You wanted them to get actually mowed down, is that what you're saying?
No, but the fact that
you didn't want the train to swerve.
Yeah,
you
the
wanted
fact that the train
you wanted
goes
to
round
see
the corner as well.
Emma wanted death.
I feel like they could have at least done a green screen of a real train. It's the fact it's so clearly a toy train that just ruins.
I thought it was cute.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if they were they filming stuff yet, because there are some episodes later on. I forget what episode it is, but there's a ski sequence of a bunch of Whatnot Muppets skiing downhill. And I think that they composite some live action footage of, just a camera, probably like somebody on skis holding a camera going down a hill or something like that. But at this point, I think they were probably trying to keep it all in house. They probably weren't even going out looking for stock footage. But yeah, so I would guess that somebody had to build that toy train, and then they had to rig up, the smoke coming out of the train, the whole thing.
It's probably more effort than just building a little Muppet train that they could have used force perspective to make it look big behind them or something. That probably could have been easier.
It probably would have been more Muppety too.
And then Emma could have got the wanton destruction that she wanted.
Very disappointed Muppets didn't get hit by train.
Craves the thrill of a crash. I thought it was a great little button though, because I did genuinely think maybe they are just going to sing this whole number just in front of this little blue screen. So I am glad there was at least an oncoming threat to sort of...
Can I tell you a fun fact about the Chattanooga Choo Choo?
Please do.
Yes.
So the Glenn Miller...
How many little tap dancing girls can you fit on the Chattanooga Choo Choo?
Oh, there were probably a few of us. There's probably at least 10, Lewis.
I'm surprised there's not like a video somewhere of you doing
Oh God,
this,
don't
Jade.
Emma, don't encourage. There probably is. Let's not try and find that. So
we know your mum listens.
Yeah,
send
we know.
it in.
We
Yeah,
know Mum
Tracy.
listens.
Tracy, send it in.
Well, somebody has homework now.
Yeah. Damn it. So the Glenn Miller Band recording of it was the first song to receive a gold record. It sold 1.2 million copies, and it was the first ever gold record presented.
That's cool.
Wow.
There you go.
That's...
See, I'm not the only one that loves this song. It's fine.
No,
It's not just me and your dad, Lewis, okay?
1.2 million other people also loved it. But what year was that, Jade?
1942.
Weren't there more important things to be doing in 1942 than awarding a gold record to Chattanooga Choo Choo? Wasn't there a war on?
Most important thing.
I suppose... Wait, at what point did America finally enter the war?
41, wasn't it?
Maybe
41.
Oh, okay. So no, not even the excuse of they hadn't hit Pearl Harbor yet. They were things. That's one of my favorite things whenever you watch an old, beautiful, black and white film. You sort of watch it and then it says, MGM 1944. And you're like, ooh, really should have been probably doing something else right now. As much as it's helping morale, but it's kind of ooh. So, we catch the not yet murderous Chattanooga Choo Choo into George Burns' dressing room. And we have George's interaction with Fleet. What's his name? See, again, he made absolutely no impact on me. And I'm so Fleet Scribbler. Yeah, very good. I just didn't. Every time I meant to hear his name during the show, I was writing a note, and then I missed it every time. And I was like, I'm not going to skip back. Somebody else will say it. It'll be fine.
This is why you're glad Lewis doesn't work on Muppet Wiki, Scott, because...
I shouldn't be allowed to work anywhere.
No, anywhere.
I only learn words when I'm being paid.
We'd have to get you some Fleet Scribbler merchandise. I think he did appear. He was on like a notebook or something, and that was it. Never seen him.
I mean, that makes sense. That would, if you were going to put him anywhere, that would be good.
That's not true. He did appear. I think he was in some of the comics that they did like 10 years ago or something like that. They brought him back. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know, if they can bring Wayne and Wanda back for a one-moment gag in a 2011 Muppets movie, there's definitely room for Fleet Scribbler.
Justice for Fleet.
Justice for Fleet. So George has a line in his little chat with Fleet where he has this sort of little monologue about the key to being a good actor is if you walk into a scene and somebody says sit down and you sit down in the chair, you're a good actor. And I was like, I agree! That's all that matters!
I was wondering how you were going to like take that scene, Lou.
No, loved it. As somebody who finds the sort of way certain actors, Jared Leto, chat about their process to get into these characters, I think it's a bunch of crap. Because method acting is usually just used as an excuse for a douchebag to behave terribly to his colleagues for the extent of just trying to find his art. Like, nobody ever does method acting to play, like, a nice character. Or, you know, Meg Ryan wasn't doing method acting on When Harry Met Sally. Do you know what I mean? To be like Sally Albright, you know? It's called acting. But yeah, so I was very much pro George Burns' little monologue on acting.
And as far as we know, George Burns never sent any of his co-stars a dead rat in a box.
Exactly. So, you know...
to jump on your Jared Leto comment.
Yeah, no, please do. As long as it's a dismissive comment of Jared Leto, anybody can jump on.
Yeah, I'm there for it.
Yeah. Sorry, Emma, I knew at senior school you did find him attractive, but like he's only become worse and worse as time has gone by.
I don't know how anybody could ever look at him and think he's attractive after House of Gucci. Like, I just don't know how that's
we are talking
possible.
like 20 years ago, so it's fine.
I know, it's fine.
Look, Emma, I think I had a Kelly Brook poster on my wall 20 years ago. Times can certainly change. Like... But no, I really enjoyed this scene. But again, all I could think was just that George is really just like... Those are going to be some deep cigar stains in the sort of like mat and fur of all these different Muppets. They are going to like stink. Although, then again, how many of the puppeteers probably smoked at the same time? They probably already smelled of cigarettes.
And the crew, yeah.
Yeah, and the crew.
Are there pictures of them smoking on the sets and things, Scott?
I can't think of any. I've seen, probably of all the performers, Frank Oz, he would smoke cigars while directing. There's quite a few photos of that. I don't know about on the Muppet Show. I can't think of a whole lot of that. There are quite a few photos if you don't have... the book that came out in, I think it was 81, called Of Muppets and Men by Christopher Finch, who just recently passed away. He did Of Muppets and Men, and he did The Works. Both gorgeous books, but if you're focused on just the Muppet Show, that Of Muppets and Men is the one to get. There's just tons and tons of photos in there. Yeah, I can't think of anything. I'm sure there are some exceptions, but
so actually, Jade and I do both own a copy of Muppets and Men. Jade bought hers online for a fairly reasonable amount of money, and I came across mine in a box on the street, just left outside in London. That people were just like, "Yeah, I know," and
wow.
I didn't. And I only realized when we started doing this podcast that apparently it was a rare book. I hadn't even sort of looked it up. Although Jade is looking at me quite angry because I also haven't really read it. I've looked at it, but I haven't actually read it properly.
Lewis has got an ongoing bit, which is just that he's not going to read it effectively.
Yeah. I don't need to, because Jade is slowly reading it to me in her book club week by week now at the moment, so it's fine.
It's all good.
Veterinarian's Hospital returns! Hooray!
Hooray!
Yay!
Dr. Bob is back
with, I think, a really strong episode this week of
absolutely. I mean, the fact that we start on Miss Piggy like huffing the gas, which
Again.
is just
Yes.
hilarious. And
she's
then
getting ready for that page 3.
She is.
Maybe she's recovering afterwards. She's done now. She's trying to like forget what she did.
She's realised what she's done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we go from that little opener with Miss Piggy, and then we just have. It's just so solid. It's fantastic. They have all their different phone gags, which were They were obviously puns, but it was really funny and fresh, and I really enjoyed it, especially when you had like the payphone, the yellow pages, and like make sure it's local calls. And
Operator,
I just thought the interaction with Dr. Bob, Janice, and Miss Piggy was really, really good. How did you guys find it?
When Miss Piggy was laughing so
Yes.
hard, and then she was like, the lines are busy, and they all just like fell about. That was absolutely hysterical. And I feel like it just was that like enough of an escalation that we haven't really seen before in Veterinarian's Hospital. It's like that infectious thing, isn't it? Of when other people are laughing, you can't help but laugh yourself. Yeah, I thought this was really, really solid. I think this might be my favourite Veterinarian's Hospital so far. Just so silly and joke heavy, but that's what you want from it. You don't want it to actually lean too far into the hospital aspect of it.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, outside of Veterinarian's Hospital, Piggy wouldn't laugh at jokes like that. So it's kind of a reminder that Nurse Piggy is kind of a character that she plays.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Other than that, I think, it's the jokes in Veterinarian's Hospital. I enjoy them because they're just so absurd. They're, they're like half a step above like the Talking Houses, which... There are opinions on the Talking Houses, but these definitely work better. I do wonder about lines about calling long distance and the line being busy. I would imagine if there are younger people watching these for the first time today, they might not get the reference, so maybe those jokes didn't date very well. But yeah, otherwise. I'd say a pretty solid Vet's Hospital.
I mean, if we're gonna have to judge it by kids, I don't think they'd even know what a landline was. Like they'd be looking at that thing, being
True.
Like, "Where's the screen?" No, I thought it was fantastic. I really, I just felt like it was slightly elevated in a way. Like, obviously, knowing that each joke was going to be in some way telephone related, I started enjoying being fed the setup and trying to almost beat the punchline in my own head, and then a couple of them I got, but then other ones I was like, God, these writers, I really, really enjoyed this one. I agree. I think this is also my favorite Veterinarian's Hospital as well. Just, yeah, I thought it was a joy.
And I think something we've all just sort of touched on, but to compare it to something like The Houses, that's so dry and the delivery is so static and there's none of that character interplay. Whereas actually with
Would
this...
you say it was detached or semi-detached? And that was the level of quality of terrible joke that The Houses would give on the Muppet Show.
Yeah, it's fully detached.
You're hired.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was nice to see it, even if I did think we were getting a Pigs in Space. It was still nice
And
to see it.
speaking of houses, we then go into Fozzie's number. And the reason I say houses is because this song is based on the Old Kent Road, which is less than 5 minutes from where I live. I could walk to the Old Kent Road in about 10 minutes. And they mentioned Camberwell, where I used to live. I loved it. Although I did hope we were going to get a... whenever they put the Muppets in front of one of those like old-timey sort of row of shops flats, I always hope that it's going to be a Easter parade style walk down the avenue where it will actually start moving. But alas, it was still static because they spent all the money on Quanta de Gusta.
Last week, down our alley comes a tough, nice old geezer with a nasty cough. Sees my missus, takes his topper off in a very gentlemanly way. Ma'am says I have some news to tell. Your rich Uncle Tom of Camberwell popped off. Reason 'cause he weren't too well, leaving you his little donkey gray. Watcher, all the neighbors cry, who you gonna meet? They'll have you walk the street. They'll laugh. I thought I should have died. Knocked him in the Old Kent Road.
I really loved that Fozzie was dressed as a Pearly King.
Because it was so cute.
He doesn't really get that many outfits that we've seen.
How is he dressed?
As a Pearly King.
Pearly King.
is this not something else that translates?
Yeah, I don't know if I know what that is.
Oh, so a Pearly King, like Pearly Kings and Queens are these sort of London...
See if I can get some up.
London-specific kind of, what would you call them? Like cultural like...
It's a very South London thing, I think, isn't it?
And it would be these sort of men and women who would dress kind of how Fozzie is dressed, where they would be covered in sort of... They wear all black and then be covered in silver buttons that would be sort of adorned on the entire thing. And they were just kind of entertainers, and it's a very, very old kind of like 1920s, 1930s thing. But it's sort of like East London and South London. I don't really know much about them beyond the fact that I can identify them. Oh, Jade's going into presentation mode. There we go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's what they would look like.
Okay.
Or, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
It's kind of like a British eccentric kind of thing. And they would sing songs and, I don't know, just... Honestly, actually, I've never had to explain a Pearly King or Queen in my life because it's just a weird thing where you sort of go, there's a Pearly King or Queen.
I see they're from Finsbury, so it's not just a South London thing. So I stand corrected on that. But yeah, it's very much a working class thing as well, which also makes sense for this song because it's obviously all about the character coming into an inheritance and everything. So yeah, but this is another one of the things that I just... so British, and clearly very British if you don't recognise it either. But it was the UK spot, so I guess this was specifically for
us being
a British audience.
Yeah.
But then us being British, we also can't quite explain what they are either.
No, but we recognise them.
Well, it informs. So the outfit that Fozzie is wearing here, he wears at least 2 more times on the Muppet Show. He wears it in Any Old Iron in the Elton John episode, and he wears it
very
in,
company song.
In the Kenny Rogers episode in the number Knees Up Mother Brown, which also
again that's a very
which also
it's a Landon song.
Yeah, I think those are both UK skits. Okay, that makes sense.
That would make sense.
That's cool though. So they made an outfit especially for Fozzie, especially for the UK audience. I love that. That's really, really cool because
it is cool.
The UK spots are so often, they just feel like they threw them together in about 5 minutes flat, and that actually means that they spent a bit of time and effort on it. So that's nice. I like that.
And Fozzie's dancing was so cute as well when he got to his little moment where he was sort of like bopping around, and obviously we can't see his leg, but just the like through the puppetry sort of understanding that he's kicking his leg out and the arms are going that way. It was just, I thought it was adorable.
So is watcher, is that slang? I don't understand that bit.
Yeah, watcher would be sort of like hello or goodbye.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, sorry, I just want to point out that it's mother of pearl buttons, not silver buttons.
Yeah, that makes
Thanks.
sense. Yeah.
That's Emma the historian. Thanks, everyone.
That's a good
Thanks,
distinction.
Yeah. Well, and that would also make sense why they're pearly kings and queens and not silvery kings and queens.
I did find a little thing if we want a little...
No, please do, Emma, because
Go,
I
Emma,
was just
go.
feeling
History.
around in the dark. Trying to find...
Okay, so it says the very first pearly king is accepted to have been Henry Croft, an orphan and street sweeper. In the mid to late 1870s, Croft completely covered his suit in mother of pearl buttons, creating the first pearly suit. He did this to draw attention to himself when collecting money for orphanages and hospitals.
Aww.
And so the Pearly mission to support charitable organisations was born.
Oh, well, there you go.
Cool.
That's cool.
I didn't know they had a charitable intention, but that does make sense as to why they're singing and usually holding buckets. So that does make more sense.
Yeah, it's not just to raise funds for themselves.
Look, I wouldn't put it past them. I'm sure those buttons were expensive.
Also, busking is just a thing, so that's also fine.
Well, yeah, that too.
I really loved in this next backstage bit with Gonzo and George Burns that he said that he was from the Marx Brothers. That just felt like such a nice sort of tying of worlds together, but also I guess a nod to the craziness of Gonzo's name. And it does sound like something that the Marx Brothers would have had in their lineup.
Yeah, it fits right in. I like it.
Yeah, their
good.
cousin Gonzo Marx. Yeah. And again, George Burns lived through the entire career of the Marx Brothers and then lived long enough to then see, Steve Martin, and then got to,
He worked with Steve Martin.
Yeah, and then he would have then, I'm trying to think if he had been around just long enough to see even Ellen come out. Do you know what I mean? I think he dies a bit too early to see that. Do you know what I mean? But I'm just trying to think of just the length and breadth of people he saw. He saw silent comedy. I just don't. It blows my mind. I can't quite conceive it.
Hold on? You said 1896.
So he would have been watching Buster Keaton.
But cinema was invented in 1892, I think, something like that, wasn't it? So the moving pictures had only been around for 4 years at the point that he was born.
He would have seen Gloria Swanson when she was a silent film actress and then been able to have gone to the cinema to see her in Sunset Boulevard and then seen her die. That's insane. I just keep thinking of things he saw.
Well, to be fair, Gloria Swanson saw all those things too.
Sorry, that really tickled me.
Lewis is gone.
Just saying.
Your outburst about George Burns fits in quite nicely with this whole bit about the stories from the old days, and I really loved how that was teed up and the interplay between Gonzo and George around I haven't told you any stories yet. And Lewis is still lost to everyone.
It just really tickled me, Scott. I'm sorry. Oh my god.
But again, I think that it's a similar joke to what we were saying about earlier, where it's totally playing on your expectations and then pulling the rug out from under you.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we do get to hear Gonzo tell a stupid story about the first act he worked with being a kangaroo who could tell time, who kept a pocket watch in their pouch, but it was set to Australian time.
Yeah.
It's so random, but it's just perfect and it works, and it seems to have such a nice synergy with the little dog anecdote that George has told too. So it's just weaving all of these characters and these stories together in a really, really cohesive way, I think.
Yeah, they've got a really great volley going back and forth here, and it plays right into the way that they ended it on purpose. After the whole thing about the kangaroo and, oh, he's from Australia. No, he's never been to Australia. He's from Sydney. Sydney's my agent. I think he handled me, blah, blah, blah. It's just this quick,
Yeah.
And it ends with, they finally get a beat, and George says, you remind me of somebody that I used to work with. And, Gonzo is, oh, that's great. You know who I'm talking about, right? Walter Matthau. That's her, all right. Which is great because, they don't mention her, but, obviously he's talking about Gracie Allen, who typically in their comedy acts, she played this kind of dim-witted character opposite George as the comedic straight man. And Gonzo is the perfect foil for that. He fits into the dim-witted character that Gracie Allen played so well. It's just it's very nicely done if you know where this material is coming from and the way that they just slightly twisted it to make it work.
Yeah,
it's very nice.
It's really good. Sorry, I've pulled myself together now. I'm fine.
You back with us?
I am. Sorry. I wrote this down as we went into the next number. Is this the first sort of proper Miss Piggy and Kermit double act song that we've had so far on the Muppet Show? Because I feel like every other number that they've maybe featured in together has been more of an ensemble effort. And this kind of really struck me as the first moment I felt like I just saw both of them standing center, having the entire song to the both of them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. I don't think we've seen a duet between them yet.
Yes, that would be a much quicker way to say what I just said.
It's okay. It's usually me that fumbles around for the word and you go, it's a duet, Jade. So
yeah, well, I've had a vodka and now my brain is mush.
We're switching roles. Much like how the ballroom is switching to something we can actually enjoy for once.
When this started, I swear to God, Jade, I thought if this was going to be another At the Dance sketch, I was going to come in here so livid at you for promising that they were gone.
I know. When it started, I was like, oh no.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Please, God.
Yeah.
But no, thank God it wasn't at the... yeah, thank God.
Kermit! Won't you dance with me, Kermit?
I won't dance. Don't ask me. I won't dance. Don't ask me. I won't dance, madam, with you. My heart won't let my feet do things they should do.
You know what?
What?
You're lovely.
And so what?
I'm lovely.
But oh, what you do to me.
I'm like an ocean wave that's bumped on the shore.
I feel so absolutely stumped on the floor.
I absolutely loved
Oh,
this.
so did I.
I Won't Dance it's just such a perfect song for Kermit and Piggy to do together.
Yeah.
And it was so lovely how it was staged with obviously all the focus on them, but that you still had the at the dance couples milling around behind them. It really speaks to them as characters as well, that they're able to do a Fred Astaire Ginger Rogers number, and it just feel like, yeah, this is part of their chemistry and their relationship, and there's this pool that she's so desperate to be with him, and he's just not interested.
Is this the one where she does that kind of shimmying advance on Kermit?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's so Piggy.
It is.
It really is. And also my other favourite part is when she's kind of like entrapped him, and his like the way that Jim is moving his face is brilliant because it scrunches all up and he's like, oh.
Yeah, you really get the vibe of her fully bear hugging him and sort of like giving him no means of escape. It's really gorgeous, and it just
God, how quickly would Piggy be cancelled today?
Yeah, probably pretty.
I think Piggy is like beyond cancellation. Do you know what I mean? It must have like.
Oh no, yeah, I agree, but you know, they're trying to think of like today's sensibilities with what they were getting away with. That is just wild.
That's very true. Yeah. I think everybody would be too afraid because they know she'd just karate chop them. Like they'd be like, "No, just don't do it."
Yeah.
But then that would mean that she's even more vilified, because it would just be like, she's unworkable. You can't. Do you know what I mean? Like those people that are so strong and so immovable. I feel like there's just an element of like, we're just not going to deal with you these days. And I think Piggy would fall into that camp.
Yeah.
As much as anything else. I did write down for this that it felt so nostalgic to see them dancing together this early on in the Muppet Show. And I felt it was almost a bit like when you see pictures of like your parents when they've gone out dancing or something.
Aww.
And it's like the early days of a couple together. There's like a youthful innocence to it that
That's a really nice way to put it. Yeah.
I really liked Kermit's purple tuxedo as well.
I knew you'd like that.
That will also be Lewis's outfit of the week as well.
Not the Carmen Miranda.
Oh my god, what am I saying? Yeah, it's absolutely Carmen Miranda. No, forget. I can get that. I can get that purple jacket any day of the week. No, give me the full Carmen Miranda, please.
The Statler and Waldorf button on the end of this was also great.
Bravo!
Bravo!
Yes. Oh,
Joe Bravo.
Joe Bravo. I think I've seen some of his films. Sorry, we'll just leave that hanging dead.
Yeah, we'll let everyone decide what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
George Burns style.
I thought this machine skit was maybe a little something of nothing.
So this is a classic Muppet sketch.
Yes.
This is the third of at least 4 times they would do this. They first did it in '65 for IBM. It was with the kind of like the prototype for Cookie Monster. They did it a couple years later in '67 for the Ed Sullivan Show, also with the proto cookie. There's a Lord of the Rings reference in that one if you listen closely. This is the first time they do it with Luncheon Counter Monster, who got his name from the Nancy Walker episode. And they do it again 10 years later for a Muppet meeting film, also with Luncheon Counter Monster. And yeah, I can see your point, Lewis, about it. You know, it's not. It takes its time. You know, it's a little duller. There's some, you know, there are some visual gags there. You know, about something about how the monster eats a part of the machine that costs thousands of dollars, and he enjoyed it. And then the narration flips over to, oh, this one's only 35 cents, and he throws it away. There's, it's not laugh out loud humor like some of the other stuff that might be in a Muppet Show, but they're like these little nuanced bits that are thrown in there. And it's kind of fun to look at the different versions of this and see what they changed and what they kept, and how they mixed it up. I think probably what's notable about this one is, the Muppets are obviously known for their explosions. They did them a lot for live appearances. Usually it was, they'd have like a funnel, and they would blow like powder up into the air, and it would look like an explosion. They use a smoke machine for this with some sparks, but they added, I think they use what was called like a telestrator effect, or it's just like a very crude computerized animation over the screen to sort of emphasize. It's very 70s, but it was,
it's hilarious.
Just another... It was very groovy. It was a very groovy.
It made me think of like 1970s Doctor Who, Lou.
1970s Doctor Who would not have done that, Emma. They would at least, it would have been a lot cheaper than that.
I can see that.
I felt like with this that it went on for so long, and the payoff of the explosion at the end was not really worth how long we'd spent with Lunch Encounter Monster eating this computer and taking it apart. I've just felt like I probably would have appreciated it more if it was a bit more short and snappy and got to that explosion that little bit quicker. The one thing that I did think was really quite funny was how the mouth kept on talking even when everything else around it had completely been destroyed and eaten and taken, and the mouth was still going. I thought that made me chuckle. But this was probably the lowest point of the episode for me.
When it got down to just the little mouth speaking on its own, just that sort of that grey, sort of like almost cylinder thing, it did make me feel sad that at the point of technology that we're at now, that Alexas and our own little like home little service bots don't just have a little flappy mouth that just like lands some like 1/3 down, because actually, as much as we don't have an Alexa, I find them scary. But if we had one that had a little flapping mouth, I think I would find that utterly charming and purchase it immediately, and they could listen to everything I do. Like, I would be so easily taken in by just, it has a mouth, it thinks it's people. And, I would just be like, buy it. So that's all I thought.
Maybe they should make Muppet ones.
They kind of did in the 80s. There was a what did they call it? They called it the Big Bird, Magic Talking Big Bird or something like that, where it was a big plush of Big Bird, and in his back was a cassette player, and the cassette player had a signal in the tape that would activate. Like, you couldn't do it with just like a Beach Boys cassette or something, but the signal in the tape would. Yeah, Big Bird his mouth would flap. So they're out there, and there's probably a new third-party version of that works with Alexa. So Lewis, you might be in luck.
Oh my god! I could find a way to hook my Big Bird up to my Bluetooth and just have it like singing Doja Cat. That'd be great.
We'll get one of Fleet Scribbler for you.
Fantastic! My new favorite character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they might still be quite cautious of someone playing something dodgy out of Big Bird's mouth and then having Big Bird just
flapping along,
singing along to something very un-Sesame Street.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Doja Cat isn't always un-PC.
my cousin definitely tried to get to Big Bird to sing some death metal, but years ago. But thankfully it didn't work out.
Yeah, thank God. I wasn't necessarily saying Doja Cat, I just meant in general, like, some death metal or something would not be ideal.
Just a brief note on this little backstage scene. Once again, I'm just being proved right again and again that Scooter is a scab who follows the money, and I will never have an affinity for Scooter ever. It's never going to happen.
Scott, I'd love to hear your take on Scooter, because Lewis is completely against the to use the internet's term, the nepotism baby that is Scooter the Gopher. What do you think of Scooter?
I don't think anybody's ever asked me my opinion on Scooter. I don't think I really have one. He's fine, I guess. He's
exactly.
Just whatever.
He's just such a nothing.
He's mediocre, which I think is why people were so offended by Walter, because he's like somehow an even blander Scooter who can whistle. Like that's his, he's got that going for him. But no, I don't. I mean, I can't think of anything remarkable to say about Scooter except for that's not going to work well on an audio podcast, but
we'll drop in a little description. We'll get it in post.
There you go.
Yeah, I hate him. But by contrast, Swedish Chef's expressions while he's talking to Fleet Scribbler, just sort of explaining all the business that's going on in the Muppet Show, I found utterly charming and hilarious.
I want to know what he was describing, because he looked like he was just saying a recipe to me. Like, it just looked like he was explaining how to make something.
It's another George Burns joke, Jade. It's left up to the audience to decide.
I'd like to think it was, because they did get letters, while the show was still in production, from people saying, that's not real Swedish, right? Like they genuinely got letters like that. So I like to think that whenever they played around with his dialogue, they were kind of poking fun at that. The fact that, Fleet can understand him or whatever. Maybe not, but yeah, it was a thing.
No, I think you're probably right, because obviously the joke was Kermit was thinking he was scot-free because Fleet would never be able to understand Swedish Chef, and actually Fleet was having a perfectly lovely conversation with him. So they definitely were playing on that, like, who can understand Swedish Chef? What language is it that he's speaking?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, Fleet understands it. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me that they got letters, but boy, wow, that's...
It's nice to know that actually Twitter existed well before the advent of Twitter, and people actually would have spent money on stamps to send in their actually message to the people.
Oh yeah, those are fun to find. We found on the wiki, we found quite a few of them for Sesame Street. People were constantly writing in about that. This bit about the Swedish Chef is a great example. And of course, Brian J. Jones includes a really terrific one in his autobiography of Henson in response to somebody writing in about, I think it was The Cube. Have you read? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've read it. Emma and Lewis haven't, but
of course.
Yeah, so he describes the letter, and I think he prints part of the letter, and it's just this verbal nonsense. This guy was writing in trying to sound smarter than he really was, and Jim didn't always respond to letters, but he did respond to this one, and the only thing he wrote back was, "Dear Mr. Dion, what the fuck are you talking about?" Yours truly, Jim Henson, or whatever, sincerely, Jim. But yeah, there's some really terrific letters that have been written into Muppet projects over the years.
Such a privilege to be able to find those kinds of things and then to be able to share them. It's like some of that stuff that you just sort of think some of it's going to be buried forever and or hasn't been kept at all. But to know that it's still out there is just amazing.
Yeah, or mothers writing into Sesame Street worried that their kids are going to be seduced by Dracula. That's a good one. There were lots of those.
Wow, Twilight maybe suggests that they were possibly onto something. So,
Van, sexy werewolf.
I'll hold that note. I'll find another song. I got it. You made me love you. I didn't want to do it.
Didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it.
You made me want you.
Didn't want to do it.
You made me want you, and all the time you knew it.
All the time you knew it. All the time you knew it. All the time you knew it. All the time you knew it.
You made me happy sometimes.
Didn't want to do it.
You made me happy sometimes. You made me sad. And there were times, dear, you made me feel so glad.
So glad.
Let's do that again. So glad.
So glad.
You made me sigh for it.
Didn't want to do it.
So we go into our last number, which is George's kind of big musical number, again with Rolf on the piano. And I just think it's a really, really sweet number. You have Miss Piggy come on, adoringly gazing up to George and saying, "You're the best and I love you," and everything. And I really love the bit between her and Rolf when they kind of have a couple of remarks, and she calls him, I think it's flea bait,
Yep.
which is quite funny. I love the fact where George is like, "Right, Ralph, let's go. Let's get this in my key, and kids, you can follow me." And then out comes Nigel and Baskerville the Hound. Miss Mousy comes back.
She's not dead.
She's not dead after falling out of her cup. And then he kind of does his little Rex Harrison singing. I just think it's a really lovely number, and the fact that they're doing the chorus and the interplay with that as well. And then the fact that you get Gonzo, and then he starts kind of saying things at the wrong time. And I love there's one bit with Miss Piggy where she literally turns and stares Gonzo and he kind of disappears. I think it's just a really great number.
Yeah, this is another one from his, I guess, repertoire, if you want to call it that. He recorded this for an album in 1973 called George Burns Sings, and he does it very similarly. It's a mashup of It All Depends on You and You Made Me Love You, with a similar transition and a similar play off of the chorus that's backing him up. But again, as they've done several times in this episode, that they add a new element to make it a little, just give it that Muppet touch. Gonzo's response to the lead is it's just this funny, cute thing that they throw in there that I think works really well. And I especially like, he's you see him holding it must be like sheet music or something, and he keeps staring down on it like, oh I forgot to come in on my line, and here it is. I like that a lot.
It's super cute.
Yeah, and I think you can really see George is really comfortable performing it as well, because obviously, like you said, it's part of his repertoire. Because we've had episodes in the past where, for example, let's say Joel Grey, where obviously it's quite heavy on cabaret, and he's performing his song, and he just looks as we said at the time, it was just quite uncomfortable. Whereas obviously George is really having fun with what he's doing and likes performing the songs that he's well known for.
I think he also just looks comfortable with the Muppets in a way that sometimes the guest stars don't.
Yeah.
I think there's clearly people that come on and just don't know what to do about the fact that they've got these little creatures bobbing around at chest height, and they don't really know where to look, and they don't know what they should or shouldn't touch. And he didn't have any of that. Him and Piggy are extremely close, and obviously he's still got his cigar in his hand, but he's singing for the chorus and for Rolf, and it's really, really lovely. And the Gonzo bit is just a perfect twist.
The harmonies in this song are really good too. They're so good to the point where, most of the Muppet performers will tell you that they can sing songs in a sort of comedic kind of way, but they're not singers, they're not vocalists, which that's one of the reasons why I don't think she's joined at this point yet, but why they brought Louise Gold in, because
she is, and she was on this song as well. So
so and I wonder, I haven't read anything behind the scenes about it, but I wonder if they had a separate chorus for this, because they sound really good. The harmonies are just beautiful.
It is good.
It does. It sounds amazing.
Jade, are you ready for me to drop my Judy Garland reference of the episode into this?
I was waiting for it, Lewis.
So,
Go on.
So obviously one of the songs in this mashup is "You Made Me Love You," which is obviously a song from the Great American Songbook, but it gained a new popularity, and I'm throwing a dartboard at 1937, because there was an MGM party where a young Judy Garland got invited. It was Clark Gable's birthday party that the studio was holding, and Judy Garland sang this song, but they gave it an opening sort of I don't know what to call it, stanza or pre-verse or whatever before they launched into it. That's her singing "Dear Mr. Gable," and the song is then made to be like her writing a fan letter to Clark Gable, and they loved it so much that they then put it into one of their little MGM shorts. So that's me getting Judy Garland into another episode of Muppetsational.
Well, Lewis, I'm going to extend on your Judy Garland-ness, because You Made Me Love You was also the B-side to Over the Rainbow.
Well, that makes sense, because it was only 2 years later.
Yep. And then the other thing to say is that Judy did do It All Depends on You as well. She sang it with Barbra Streisand, and she also sang it with Liza.
Well,
but that's been covered by so many different people: Shirley Bassey, Elle Jolson, Frank Sinatra. I mean, everyone's done that. Yeah. But yeah, Judy did both of these songs.
Of course she did. Although a couple of the two shots of Piggy and George Burns, I was getting quite like Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett vibes.
Who also did You Made Me Love You, I think.
Of course they did.
It's like 6 degrees of separation.
It's all these same standards. They just come over and over again. But yeah, there was a couple of two shots, particularly when, when Miss Piggy is looking so adoringly up at George Burns. I was like, it's just like the way that Lady Gaga looks at Tony Bennett.
Oh, wait, hold on. Maybe they did I Won't Dance. I don't know. I definitely, when I was looking things up, I definitely
they did do I Won't Dance. I've never listened
to
a jazz album Gaga, but I feel like I've secondhand come across that without my choice. It has happened.
Anyway, there you go. So
yeah.
I feel like the goodbyes also followed up on Miss Piggy as a page 3 model, with the George Burns and Miss Piggy having been seen at a discotheque together by Pete Scribbler.
Oh God, I love the word discotheque so much.
It's how Emma describes the club.
Yeah.
Going to the discotheque. Yeah, it's a cute little ending. It's not the best that they've had, but it was perfectly sort of serviceable conclusion. But I mean, the little button at the end where Statler and Waldorf, and we have Statler actually turn to the audience and say, "Why do you watch this show?" I was like, just because I have a podcast. I don't know.
Which you won't understand.
Well, they will. They're still alive. They're like the George Burns of their time.
Oh my God, they're must be even older than George Burns. They were George Burns' age in the 70s.
Yeah, it was a very good little ending. I will be very interested to see how we will each rank this episode. But first, we must decide upon our MVMP. And for Scott's benefit, it is our most valued Muppet performer. Emma, why don't you kick us off and give us your MVMP for this episode?
See, now, this was quite difficult for me this week because I wasn't really sure who to give it to, because I thought everyone was really strong in this episode. But I think I'm actually going to give it to Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
Purely because I absolutely loved her opening number. It was just great. And it was quite funny seeing her interactions with Fleet Scribbler as well. And I just loved the moment with her and Kermit during their duet in the little At the Dance segment. And also, I just really liked her in the last song with George as well, and their sort of interaction. And this whole episode was just like pure Miss Piggy. She was just really, really good. And I just thought that it was just so nice to see her kind of having a lot of fun in this episode and just having all her little bits, like we were saying earlier, where she was playing like Nurse Piggy again in Veterinarian's Hospital. So for this episode, my MVMP is going to be Miss Piggy. How about you, Jade?
See, I thought you'd go for Rolf as well, who is who I'm going for, because I thought Rolf was really, really adorable in this.
He was.
Yeah, I loved seeing him with George. He's got such a starring role in this episode, which we quite often don't see with Rolf, so it's so nice to see him front and centre. And also Veterinarian's Hospital was just great. So yeah, I'm going for Rolf this week. Now, Scott, have you got a favourite Muppet from this episode?
Is it most valuable Muppet performer? What is it?
Most valued Muppet performer.
Okay, so I guess I'll have to go with Dave Goelz, both for, as we mentioned before, purposefully trying to upstage Piggy as that, random pig up there in the balcony, but also as Gonzo, because, you know, like I said, the volley that he had going back and forth, filling in for Gracie Allen in those scenes with George Burns was really terrific.
Yeah.
Sorry, I realised we didn't clarify that. We actually do mean within the world of the Muppet Show, as in the fictional character rather than the actual puppeteer.
Yeah, I'll give it to Gonzo.
Gonzo, love it. See, I'm basically weighing it up between Gonzo and Piggy for me, but I've just had a cheeky little look at my notes app where I write down who we give it to every week, and I've just seen that I haven't yet given it to Miss Piggy yet this season. So I'm going to very happily give it to Miss Piggy, and all I'm going to say is Carmen Miranda. Like, that was just everything I wanted and more. So yeah, Miss Piggy.
Lovely.
Fantastic. Lovely. All right, let's go on to our rankings for this episode. Jade, why don't you kick us off, giving us your score out of 10 for this episode of The Muppet Show?
I'm going to go out on a limb. This has been my favourite episode of this season so far. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. The only thing I didn't really like in it was the talking machine IBM revamp. I loved everything else. So I'm going to go for 9 out of 10 toy train sets.
Wow.
And yeah, I loved this. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I hope this level continues, because if it does, it's going to be such a joy to continue watching it.
Yeah.
I think my absolute highlights were I Won't Dance, just Rolf and George in general, obviously Quanta Lagusta and Veterinarian's Hospital, and my tap dancing classic Chattanooga Choo Choo. But yeah, in general, I loved it. And like Emma said, everyone was on top form. So yeah, a real joy of an episode. Emma, what about you? What are you going to rate this episode?
I am also going to rate it 9 Chattanooga Choo Choos out of 10.
My
Well
God,
done
Emma,
for
you got
saying
that
that.
on your first
I
go.
know. I actually said it in the first go. I'm amazed.
Unprecedented.
Pretty much what you just said, Jade. I thought it was a really great episode. It was a lot of fun. All the sort of songs and sketches were really, really great. Probably bar like Lunch and Counter Monster and the little, you know, computery puppet. But I just thought overall it was just really, really strong and a lot of fun. And I just really loved that everyone kind of had their moment to shine in the episode this week. And I really, really liked George as a like guest presenter, and all of the bits that he did. You know, his patter that he had with all of the different Muppets was really, really great. So yeah, so for this episode, I'm going to give it 9 Chattanooga. Oh no!
You were so close.
You blew it.
Yeah.
I blew it. 9 Chattanooga Choo Choos out of 10. Yay!
You did it. Nice recovery.
Yeah. How about you, Scott?
I'll say 9 out of 10 cigars.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Solid.
good one. Good. I think at this point, do you rate them by how far you are into the season? Is that how you're?
Yeah, we sort of have to do it on a sort of running. Yeah, we sort of have to sort of hedge our bets ever so slightly. But if an episode really just sort of knocked it out of the park for us, we sort of we were quite lucky, because when we started season 1. We jumped on it so early when it was on Disney Plus that it was in its different it was in its syndication order, not its broadcast order. So we started off with like the Rita Moreno episode, and who was that blonde woman?
It was Connie Stevens, wasn't it?
Connie Stevens. So these two like very sort of fun out the gate kind of like felt very solid episodes, and then we had to go back to once they swapped it back round, and then we'd sort of marked those fairly highly, and then actually it was quite good because it meant we were going down to like 5, 6, 5, 5, 5, 6.
Yeah.
But this season so far, we've been on quite an uphill swing, obviously, since probably I'd say like Steve Martin, Nancy Walker, Madeline Kahn. It sort of feels quite steadily on a Chattanooga Choo Choo uphill. So yeah, we sort of
Climb.
I don't know what we're going to do if we get to some sort of like Muppet Show Imperial phase where we're just going to be like 11 every week because we've got nowhere to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, the episode numbering is awful for the Muppet Show, because you've got the production numbers, which didn't always go in the order of production, and then you've got the air dates, which were different all over the world. Even in New York, it was different than L.A. You could have one episode airing before the other. So on the wiki, and I think most episode guides they stick to the production numbers that were used. So yeah, that said, rating them amongst where you guys are in season 2 by now, I think this is probably, I like the Edgar Bergen episode quite a bit. I like the Steve Martin episode quite a bit. This is probably the strongest one so far. You got Bernadette Peters coming up. That'll be a good one too.
Can't wait.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 for this one here.
Yeah.
So I think this week I'm gonna hedge my bets just a little, but only slightly. I'm gonna give it 8. I didn't want to do it out of 10. I think the writers do so well rising to the occasion of George Burns, and the fact that they sort of so wisely utilize his material in certain scenes, but then obviously I don't know, it feels like in their other parts of their writing that don't even feature him, they're sort of they're trying to build that patter all the way through, and I think it works really, really well. I mean, Piggy's opening number was just a joy from start to finish. And yeah, I feel like there's always usually maybe a bit of a lull, and it didn't come until substantially late in the episode for me. So that was fine. So yeah, I'm going to give it 8. I didn't want to do it out of 10. All right, to close, Jade, we are going to hustle ourselves over to your book club where you will give us your extract from Of Muppets and Men for this week.
So Scott has teed me up very nicely because what I'm actually going to read is the bit that talks about Fleet Scribbler. So thank you for that earlier. And also for anyone who's keeping close notes, this is the bit that I teed up in a previous episode and left as a bit of a cliffhanger. So this is the end of that.
God bless Jade. I don't know if I even get past the rankings, but we just...
Yeah, if anyone is still listening, thank you.
We know people are listening. We get the things through from the chart people.
So this is from Of Muppets and Men by Christopher Finch. And this is a quote to start with from Jerry Jewell. At the beginning of the second season, we had a big reception for the English press. There was a tremendous turnout and lots of champagne, and we chose this occasion to introduce a new character, Fleet Scribbler, a very aggressive reporter, whom we had written into the show. Naturally, the newspaper writers loved him, and they splashed him all over the front pages of the tabloids. As soon as we began working with Fleet, we realised that he was simply abrasive and awful. We just wanted to get rid of him right away, but there'd been all this publicity, so we tried to stay with him for several weeks until we could drop him without anyone noticing. In a sense, the characters who haven't worked have made their own contribution to the show, and that they enhance the overall feeling of reality. The abrasive presence of Fleet Scribbler in his few appearances helped define some of the characteristics of the regular members of the troupe. By seeing how Kermit responds to an unpleasant representative of the yellow press, we know something new about Kermit. Writing a show like this, says Jerry Jewell, has been fascinating. A character begins as a name on the page, then one day you give it 2 lines of throwaway dialogue, and for some reason there's a spark on the set, and you see all kinds of possibilities that weren't there before. You're involved in endless cycles of growth.
Very good. Thank you, Jade. And Scott, thank you so much for joining us this week. We really appreciate it. Where can our listeners go to find you? And although it feels fairly obvious to say, to find Muppet Wiki.
It's pretty easy. We're on Muppet Wiki.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, like, how do I cue that up? Like, the clue is in the title, but I wanted to give the due diligence.
Yeah, we're going strong at 39,000 plus pages, and growing. We're on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're probably most active on Twitter, so I'd say give us a follow there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you. And thank you to all of you for listening to Muppetsational. If you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, as it really helps spread the word about the podcast. You can follow us on social media. We are at Muppetsational on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can contact us at hiho@muppetspodcast.com, and you can find out more about us and the podcast at muppetspodcast.com. All right, everybody, this has been a very bumper-long episode of Muppetsational, so if you are still here, thank you so much. I have been Lewis Chandler.
I've been Jade Turner.
And I've been Emma Chandler.
We shall see you next week on another episode of Muppetsational. Bye!
Bye! Bye.
Our theme music is Peppy Pepe by Kevin MacLeod, and our artwork is designed by Charlotte Rudge, who you can follow at Charlie_R_Rudge on Instagram.
That was a funny show.
Yes, it was. I wonder if they meant it that way.